Allegations of continue to follow Michael Jackson more than a decade after his death.
I heard from a secretary who said she was warned by the office manager not to bring her little boy to the office if Michael was going to be there.
We had this mock wedding ceremony in his bedroom, like filled out some vows. It's like we're bonded forever. And he would reward me with jewelry for doing sexual acts for him.
Michael Jackson's victims are headed back to court, and this time they might have a chance. Even though Michael has been dead for over a decade, these boys claim that his companies pushed them into compromising situations, and they need to answer for what Michael did. So let's get into it. Even though Michael Jackson is gone, the cases against him are still very much alive. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about these cases that are being revived by the appellate court. Now, I know a lot of people are divided on whether Michael Jackson is problematic or not, but in this video, I want to focus on these latest updates. Recently, an appeals court revived lawsuits from two men who allege that Michael Jackson harmed them when they were boys. A three-judge panel found that the lawsuits of Wade Robson and James Safechuck should not have been dismissed by a lower court. Supposedly, these two men can validly claim that the two Jackson-owned corporations that were named as defendants in the case had a responsibility to protect them. A new Californian law that temporarily broadened the scope of SA cases enabled this court to restore this case, which, laws change all the time. So sometimes, people can get away because enough time has passed, like a statute of limitations. But this new law kind of reverses things like that.
Allegations of continue to follow Michael Jackson more than a decade after his death. Judges in California have ruled Michael Jackson's corporation could go to trial. One of his accusers is choreographer Wade Robson. He is accusing Michael Jackson's corporations of helping Jackson allegedly groom him and other victims, as well as cover up any proof.
If you guys are familiar with the Michael Jackson cases, you've probably heard of Wade and James before. This is actually the second time the lawsuits brought by Wade in 2013 and James the following year have been brought back after dismissal. The two men became more widely known for telling their stories in the 2019 HBO documentary Leaving Neverland.
Everybody wanted to meet Michael or be with Michael. And then he likes you.
I was 7 years old. Michael asked, do you and the family want to come to Neverland?
There's no thoughts of this is wrong or anything like that.
He told me if they ever found out what we were doing, he and I would go to jail for the rest of our lives.
Personally, that's where I learned a lot about these cases and these accusations against Michael Jackson, because that documentary was monumental. If you guys aren't familiar with this story, keep in mind that Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, so he wasn't ever actually alive when these boys tried to pursue their justice. Wade and James attempted to bring their case to court back in 2013 and 2014, but the lawsuits were dismissed due to a statute of limitations. In 2020, there was a new law that extended the statute of limitations, and they actually tried to file their cases back then, but then they were dismissed. But now the state has decided that their cases were dismissed for the wrong reasons, so they're allowing them to pursue the charges.
Wade Robson, James Safechuck. My memory is that they were actually witnesses or supported the defense when Michael Jackson was on trial, charged criminally.
Only Wade Robson showed up, and he told a completely different story. He said he had a wonderful childhood under the wing of Michael Jackson, that Jackson had taken him in and his family, and everything was hunky-dory. Well, then, according to Robson, he got married, had his own child, and had not one but two nervous breakdowns, diapering his son. If this does go back to trial, Vinny, you know what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, you took an oath and you said nothing happened. Now you're saying everything happened. So were you lying then? Were you lying now? How can we even believe you?
These stories are very complex, and Wade has had some issues in the past because at one point he said that nothing had happened, and then he went back and said that something did happen. And you know, each person has a different experience when it comes to trauma. I'm not one to say that Michael Jackson did this or not, but I know that when you go through this kind of trauma, you find different ways to cope, and he's had to answer for that over the years.
Why, when your mother asked you in 1993, the first trial, why did you do the same thing that Anthony did and so many other people have done? Why did you deny it?
I was afraid of being caught. It was on the news 24/7. I mean, it was just being broadcast, and there was so much attention on it from the world.
So by that time, you thought of what you were doing as a bad thing, or just as a thing that you all did, but you had to keep it a secret?
I didn't think of it as good or bad. It was that old sort of wiring of, if you're caught, your life will be over.
So each one of these victims have their own stories, but when it comes to Wade and James, their way into the courtroom is through these corporations. Well, Michael Jackson's not around any longer, but they decided to go after the corporations MJJ Productions and MJJ Ventures. Their excuse was that these companies should have acted almost like the Boy Scouts or a church where they are supposed to protect a child in their care. And at first, the courts did not agree, but then they changed their mind. And part of the reason why the courts changed their mind is because of how their lawyer is framing everything. Her name is Holly Boyer, and she claims that the boys were left alone in this lion's den by the defendant's employees. An affirmation duty to protect and to warn is correct. But Michael Jackson's estate claims that his employees don't need to act like babysitters, claiming that the parents had no expectation of Michael Jackson's employees of taking care of these kids. He said that Wade's mother showed that she didn't even know that these corporations existed when she first brought her 7-year-old son to his home. One of the reasons why Wade's and James' cases are brought together is because their abuse allegedly happened around the same time. Wade claims that he was going through this with Michael Jackson from the age 7 to 14. James claims that he was in Michael's presence for about 4 years at the end of 1988. Both men allege that the company employees did not adequately protect them from Michael Jackson and help them coordinate visits and ensuring that Michael Jackson could be alone with the boys. And this gets into the kind of like Epstein territory, because you guys know Ghislaine Maxwell. She's been charged because she was helping like coordinate these visits and a big part of the trafficking scheme. So are Michael Jackson's employees the same if they were aware that he was doing this and making sure that he got his alone time with 10-year-olds? Again, this is their words against his, but supposedly James claims that when he was in Paris back in 1998, Michael Jackson tried to, or he did, show him how to do things to himself and that it would change his life. James actually claims that Michael Jackson performed a marriage with this young boy at some point with a ring and a signed document to pretend that they got married. He also allegedly trained James to exchange declarations of love with him, and James developed a significant emotional attachment to Michael Jackson.
You're just like fully in love at that time. When I wasn't with him, I was always thinking about him. It just feels like the greatest thing when he calls. He'd come over, we'd spend the day shopping and hang out, or he'd spend the night. Or I would go to the hideout in Westwood and spend a few nights there. So we were like this married couple. And I say married because we had this mock wedding ceremony. We did this in his bedroom, and we like filled out some vows. It's like we're bonded forever. It felt good, and the ring is nice. It has a row of diamonds with a gold band.
There's something so freaky about that clip. I mean, if his like parents instructed him to tell this story, that is sick. If Michael Jackson went on to go and like marry this like 11, 12-year-old, then that's sick. I mean, this entire situation is so sick, and that looks like a real ring. And like, I believe that this boy truly felt like he was married to Michael Jackson.
I was really into jewelry, and he would reward me with jewelry for doing sexual acts for him. He would say that I need to sell him some so that I can earn the gift. My hands are shaking just holding them. We would go buy them at jewelry stores, and we would pretend like they were for somebody else and like for a female, but we would pretend like my small hand fit whatever female we were buying it for.
So even though Wade and James and others have done, press tours and have spoken about their experiences with Michael Jackson, the public is unsure of who to believe because Michael Jackson's estate has adamantly and repeatedly denied all of these claims, which I'm interested into the allegations as far as the jewelry. For example, can't they go and track jewelry payments and they can see whether this is the same piece of jewelry that was purchased by Michael Jackson? I mean, I'm sure they've already done this, but either way, his estate maintains that Jackson is innocent, saying that we remain fully confident that Michael Jackson is innocent of these allegations, which are contrary to all credible evidence and independent corroboration. These allegations were only made years after Michael's death by men motivated by money. Though there are so many people who were a part of Michael Jackson's life, so there's a lot of different stories. For example, the estate manager, Mariano, claims that he saw a few suspicious incidents. This included finding Michael's and plaintiff's underwear lying next to Michael Jackson's bed. He also saw Michael Jackson put his hands down the front of a plaintiff's shorts while they were in the jacuzzi. The estate manager heard gossip among the Neverland staff that Michael Jackson was having an affair with the plaintiff and they were sleeping together. And he also claims that another former executive director once told him and his wife to never leave his children alone with Michael Jackson.
The company is made up of people. And beginning in 1993, when I worked for the television show Hard Copy, I started interviewing people both on background and on camera. Many of them worked for MJJ Productions, and they all told me it was an open secret what Michael Jackson was doing with young boys. Well, really? Well, if that's the case, why didn't you go to the police? I heard from a secretary who said she was warned by the office manager, a woman named Norma Stakos, not to bring her little boy to the office if Michael was going to be there. Norma Stakos was the one who marshaled up busloads of children, mostly young boys, I should tell you, and bused them to Neverland to have play dates and ostensibly for Michael Jackson to get a look at which boys he liked. So there were people inside MJJ Productions who knew what was happening, and they facilitated it.
So it sounds like there's a bunch of enablers if this is true, and everyone just turned a blind eye to what he was doing, which I can't imagine working there and being okay with that and seeing it without going to authorities, but maybe the police were on his side. I don't know. One of the lawyers who have represented Wade and James in one of their court cases has explained why he believes that this case is so important.
We're suing the company itself because the company is what he used to facilitate his sexual abuse. The company is what employed all the people who surrounded him, who bought the plane tickets for the kids, who put the kids in the same hotel room as Michael Jackson, who separated the parents by sending them on trips, by putting them on different hotel room floors.
Imagining a grown adult coordinating all of this for Michael Jackson is sick. I mean, it shows you that these people, they can get paid their salary and they're fine doing whatever they need to do to get by. And as I mentioned earlier, I can't help but to think of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and this really sounds like stuff that she would do for him. So why aren't people backing these boys as much? I mean, probably because they've seen them switch their stories over the years, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who are sharing this process that this estate would go through to make sure that these boys were in Michael's hands.
And we also have corroboration, corroborative evidence in the form of people saw them going into the room together, people knew that they slept together, his maid saw the child's underwear on the bathroom floor. One of the maids actually saw them, Michael and Wade, in the shower together, naked.
So as we know, Michael Jackson is no longer around, so they can't really go after him. So the question is, are these two companies at fault? Well, the estate lawyers claim that, they were owned by Michael Jackson and the people who worked for them had no authority to go and, protect these boys. It wasn't their responsibility. They're arguing for practical purposes that, because Michael Jackson is dead, so are his companies. Quote, Jackson's corporations were Jackson. They did his bidding and his alone. Jackson's estate lawyer said, "We are disappointed with the court's decision. Two distinguished distinguished trial judges repeatedly dismissed these cases on numerous occasions over the last decade because the law required it. We trust that the truth will ultimately prevail with Michael's vindication yet again. Michael Jackson himself said, "Lies run spirits, but the truth runs marathons." There have been a few different cases against Michael Jackson when it comes to children and these kind of allegations, which a lot of these charges, they were dropped and they were dismissed, so he was able to get by.
People don't know about all these victims that are out there, some of whom Michael Jackson paid settlements to. There's a girl that he sexually abused that we know about, that he paid over $1 million when she was still a minor in the early 90s. And these are, we've got copies of the checks from his companies. His companies paid him. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to hold the company liable and for the public to understand that this is not just one or two kids coming forward. There's many different kids and many different kids who he's actually paid millions and millions of dollars in settlement to.
And there were different slip-ups throughout his career. In 2005, he got in trouble for being inappropriate with minors, but also giving them alcohol. And supposedly there are other people out there who have settled with Michael Jackson's estate, so they have, they've been silent. So the question is, do you think these corporations are responsible for answering to why Michael was able to do all of this? I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below, because this is a very interesting case because, he's no longer here, but his estate is very much here. I mean, even I was in Vegas and I saw so many MJ live concerts. So, they have the money. I don't know if these, victims are looking for that money and that will ultimately bring them peace. But nonetheless, I think that this is important in case there are people who are using their companies in this way. Nowadays, maybe they will see that they're not going to get away with it. But I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you in a new video soon. Bye, guys.